Hello. This is another segment of remote learning hacks with the South Dakota Discovery Center. We are streaming to our Facebook Live and YouTube stations. This is a time when we unpack an online learning resource for educators. My name is Ann Lewis, and I have been focusing the last few segments on iNaturalist since this is Citizen Science Month. And citizen science is that effort where people like you and me, people who are not research scientists, go and collect data and share it to the scientists using websites and apps. And today we're looking at iNaturalist data, specifically the data for three specific types of birds in South Dakota. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have put together a map of Google Map using iNaturalist data, and I'll go ahead and put the map link in the comments here. And I took this data from iNaturalist on April 4th. I exported it into a spreadsheet, and then I imported it into Google Maps, My Maps, using the import feature. And I'll just go ahead and show you a little bit of the background here by editing the map. You can see the add layer section, and when you click the add layer section, that is allows you to import data in a CSV. So I'm actually not going to add anything so this time, so we'll just go back and look at our map. You'll also see in the map section over here, there's a lesson plan that I put in a Google Doc. Well, actually, it's a Google slideshow. And I do that because there are so many different types of platforms that teachers are using. So to sort of just put the simplest stuff so you can grab it and then change it, put it in a doc, put it in a Word doc, however that works for you. Let's go back to the map. The first thing you'll start out with, I always like to start out with, is connection and sense making. So we're talking about three birds of South Dakota and where they live. And I like to give students a sense of how habitat isn't just for the animals that live outside, it's for us too. So start by sharing a personal story about a time in your life that you moved and why you moved. And ideally, the story should illustrate a need for housing, a job, which translates to food, and maybe some sort of family connection. Like, for example, before we moved to South Dakota 25 plus years ago, my husband and I were living overseas. My oldest son was getting ready to start kindergarten, and we wanted to come back to some place where we could live and raise our family. We wanted to be near our family, and at that time, other family, and at that time, his parents were living in South Dakota. And we wanted some place where my husband could get a job and I could get a job pretty easily. Could really settle down, buy a house, and make a life for us. And all of that, of course, has the idea of habitat. Now, birds don't have quite the same motivations, but they have the same needs. They need a place where they can find shelter, they can find food, and they can raise young. So that's how I like to start out this lesson. Our driving question is, where do robins, meadowlarks, and herons live? Those are the three birds we're going to be looking at. And if you don't think your students know what those are, there's a resource at the end where you can sort of give them an overview. We're going to look at this map to discover and learn things about their habitats. I'd like to start out if our students haven't used a lot of maps, and this might have to be done during some sort of Zoom, or it could just be done as sort of an exploration. Just have them look at it. What do you see? Um, the data is in layers, so you can turn them off and on in different combinations. So there we have great blue herons, and there we have American robins. We spend some time looking at the three kinds of birds, where we find each of them, looking at them by themselves and in groups. And start really beginning looking for those initial patterns. I should say parenthetically that you don't have to use Google Maps. If you have access to Esri, if you have that kind of skill set, go ahead and use Esri. It's just Google My Maps is very friendly, very easy to import data into. There's also a data sheet, and I will go ahead and share that. And this would be something they could print out and use as they're working through the map. So the instructions are, as they go through each map view, and we'll be going through different map views along the way, Sioux Falls, Lake Andes, Badlands, Black Hills, they'll put a tally mark in the column where they find a bird species in that habitat. So when they go to the map of Sioux Falls, if they see robins in neighborhoods, they can put a tally mark here. If they see two or more robins in a neighborhood, they put two tally marks. Now, they don't have to put a tally mark for each robin because that would get really full. But if it's just a one off, they just put one. If there's two or more, they put multiples. It should be noted that not every map view will have all the species, and not every species will be found in the habitat type. So let's go to Sioux Falls, and we'll click in using that link. And this will bring us to the map view, right up to Sioux Falls. So here they can spend some time. Do they see any herons? Do they see any western meadowlarks? Do they see American robins? I suggest they look at each one at a time in case some are layered on top of the others. Turn off western meadowlark and turn on great blue heron. To find out the habitats where you see them, they really should scroll in. Where are we seeing these herons? Kind of confusing because some of the other pins do look a little bit like our heron pin. Where do they see the western meadowlark and the American robin? They repeat this for Lake Andes, same kinds of exploration. Lake Andes, the Badlands, the next one, and then the Black Hills. And every time they're updating their data sheets and collecting a data set. So after they've created their data set, they go back and they look at their data and the maps, and they're looking for the patterns and relationships. Not just where they found the birds, but how many they found of each type. So I just want to point out here in the Black Hills, I'll just go ahead and scooch over here. You'll see one of the types is that they look at is the western meadowlark. And you can see the western meadowlark is right over here. When you scroll in, you'll see it's actually not in the forested areas as much. But you have this one right here that's deep in the forest. And when you click on this link here, it brings up the picture. And you can see it's just feathers. So after they analyze their data, they have to write statements about where they find these 3 different species in South Dakota. And the rule of thumb is you find American robins everywhere. You find great blue herons near water. You'll find them in urban areas, but as long as there's water there, they do okay. And then you find western meadowlarks outside of the urban areas, outside of the neighborhoods. You don't find any in town versus out of town. If you want your students to go a little further, you can have them look at the life histories of these specific birds on allaboutbirds.org, and you'll find out that the birds' nesting and feeding behaviors are really very well adapted to their different habitats. The western meadowlark does provide a little bit of a challenge, and I don't have the definitive answer about why you don't find many western meadowlarks in town. I suspect it's because they nest in the grass. They need grass on the ground to nest. They like to build it on the ground. And there's just too much mowing and activity and people walking around for them to nest successfully there. So they'll be out of town. They might go into town to feed, but to nest, we'll see them most of the year here in South Dakota. That's what they're all about. Thank you for joining me. I hope this was a useful lesson. If you use this lesson, if you have your own adaptations, please feel free to share. We are better and stronger together. If you want to adapt this, please feel free. If you are inspired to go in a completely different direction, I'd love to see what you develop out of it. Thank you. Stay safe, be well, and we'll be back tomorrow for Remote Learning Hack at 4 p.m. with Jan.